Hey, what's up you guys? You're watching Team APS, Paul here, and in today's video, we're going to dispel some myths about casual Yu-Gi-Oh players. So in Yu-Gi-Oh, a lot of casual players oftentimes get a bad rep. You'll hear things like casual players suck, or casual players don't understand the game, or casual players are just bad at Yu-Gi-Oh and should quit, and they're scrubs, and they're awful. But none of those things are really true. So in this video, I'm going to dispel some of these myths and talk about them because I think that it's unfair for people to really, put people in boxes and stereotype. And also, I'm making another video that's 5 myths about competitive Yu-Gi-Oh players. So I want you guys to make sure that after you finish this one, you go check that out so we can get a little bit more perspective on everything and come full circle. Myth number 1, all casual players are cheapskates. Now, a lot of casual players are budget players. Some of them don't necessarily invest as much money into the game and don't necessarily have the money to do so. But that doesn't mean that they're just a bunch of cheapskates looking for the cheapest way to play. There can be a lot of reasons why someone wouldn't want to spend money on this game. Maybe they actually can't afford it, maybe they just have priorities, or maybe they just kind of don't see this as a game where you need to spend, $500 on a deck to be able to play and have fun and compete. And that said, there are a lot of casual players who do spend a lot of money on the game. It might not be on Sky, Striker, Engage, or Evenly Matched or Borlo Dragon, but it could be just to complete whatever their favorite deck is. For example, I've always liked decks like Mermails, and even though Mermails might not be really a top meta contender right now, it's a deck that I think maxing out the rarity on that, getting Ultimate Dragoons and Ultimate Marksmen and Secret Megalos and just all the crazy stuff, it's expensive, but it's totally worth it if you are just, kind of an enthusiast, a collector. And so for that reason, you will see casual players who spend, hundreds of dollars on just hollowing out their favorite decks, even if it's not a meta deck. So I think that the idea that all casual players are just, budget players and they're cheapskates and they just have no reason to buy cards and don't want to, and so they just should ignore the market, they're a non-factor. None of that's true. There are people who are like that, but I don't think that to assume all of them are makes really any sense. I've seen evidence to the contrary, and I'm sure that at your local card shop or even at any events you go to, you'll find casual players who are more than willing to dump a lot of money in this game, so that's just not a fair accusation. Myth number 2, they don't build good decks. So casual players can kind of play whatever they want, and I think that, people assume, well, if you're a casual, you aren't playing the very best deck. But, maybe they A, can't afford it like we just said, or B, don't want to afford it, but also maybe they just don't want to play it. Trickstar Sky Striker is the best deck right now, but go figure, it's not that much fun to play, at least in my opinion. And that can be said for a lot of really powerful competitive decks. Some of them just aren't your playstyle. If a deck isn't your playstyle, then you don't want to build it. What I found with a lot of casual players that I know is it's not really a matter of, they don't play the meta because they absolutely hate it or they can't afford it. It's just because it's not the playstyle that they really want. That's actually why you'll see a lot of casual players stick to decks that maybe were previously meta decks. So maybe they're playing it because they liked it. There's still people who believe in Necros or Shaddolls. Those decks aren't competitive now, but maybe they played them when they were, at the top of the competitive ladder, and now that they've been nerfed, they still do play the decks. Yeah, they want some cards to come back off the ban list, but they're purists and they enjoy those decks because they're fun. And I have to kind of agree in that sense. Decks like Necros are really fun and unique. A ritual deck that actually works, yes, sign me up. I would love to play that kind of thing. And I think that's why you'll see some casual players gravitate just towards fan favorite decks. Things like Dinosaurs, things like ABCs, those are really popular casual decks. And you might find some that are a little bit older, things like Elemental Heroes or things like, Six Samurai, Blackwings. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these people aren't playing good decks. They just are playing decks that they want to play. And that said, a lot of casual players, even when they're playing decks that aren't great, will still try to optimize these decks. They'll still try to min-max these combos, drill down consistency, make the best possible use of the cards that they have. A really good example is decks like, let's say, Red Eyes, right? Red Eyes, not the best deck in the world, no one's gonna argue that point, but it can still make use of Galaxy Tomahawk. And most Red Eyes players do use that card. You'd kind of be crazy not to. It propels a really low tier deck into the category of, oh, this deck can actually spam some link monsters out and make a powerful board. And that's why you'll still see some casual players running good cards like Soul Charge or running hand traps in their decks, because even if they're not playing the best deck of the format, they're still trying to make their deck as good as it can be. So this whole idea that casual players just play only bad decks really couldn't be further from the truth. Number 3, this idea that casual players don't follow the game at all and they just don't know what's going on. Again, not true. I know some casual players who are like this. They don't really care to like know exactly when every new set's releasing or exactly what topped the last event. But the majority kind of do keep up with a lot of this stuff. There are a lot of casual players who like to, read event coverage, read feature matches, see deck breakdowns for top 32s and top 8s and things like that. There's a reason why a lot of meta-analysis breakdown videos get lots of views on YouTube, and why a lot of people follow these pages that update this type of stuff on like Facebook and everything. Because it's interesting to see what's going on with the meta, and just because you might not necessarily be like a part of it, maybe you don't go to lots of events, maybe you don't go to regionals, and maybe you don't go to YCS events, but it's still really cool to know what's happening in the game. It's kind of like being a spectator. I liken it to something like, competitive fighting games. There are people who don't necessarily play competitive fighting games, but they still enjoy watching them. They still enjoy kind of keeping up with the players, or where the metagame is headed. So just because somebody doesn't like play hyper competitively, travel a lot, spend loads of money, doesn't mean that they don't like keeping up with the game and what's going on. And in fact, when it comes to things like products and ban lists and stuff, I would say that casual players are oftentimes even more excited than many competitive players about, a new product. Whether it's because there's a new archetype coming out that they're interested in playing, or new support for a deck that they that previously didn't have it, or maybe it's just because there's reprints. A lot of people like to buy these products and get these cards, so yeah, that's definitely a myth. The fourth myth is that casual players are just bad at the game and don't know how to play it. So this is sometimes true, but again, it's not like 100% of the time, or really even close to 100% of the time. People like to say that casuals are scrubs and they're bad, and they just think they don't know how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! They don't understand rulings, and you'll hear these memes like, oh, they just summon Firewall and sit on it, or they think Pot of Desires is a neg-9. You'll meet people like that. But at the same time, I think that casual players can still be very good at the game. Like I said earlier, they might not be playing the best deck, but that might just be because they don't want to. In fact, there are a lot of players I've met who enjoy the challenge of taking a deck that seems like it's, bad, or just kind of an underdog deck, and still maximizing it and making it as good as you possibly can. And then they like the challenge of taking that to a regional and seeing how many meta decks they can beat, how they can study matchups and optimize builds and pick side deck cards and just play well and win with a deck that's their own. It could be because they just like the creativity and the originality of playing their own deck and seeing how far it can go, or maybe they just don't enjoy the best decks. But either way, there are good casual players. There are good casual players who do understand complex rulings. They do know how to play well. And oftentimes you'll even meet people who used to be competitive players who are now maybe more casual. Or they're casual players who are trying to get more competitive. And so they're taking that route of like slowly trying to improve. They might not be, playing the best thing, or they might not be going all the time to these events, but that doesn't mean that they're bad players. And that you can see that in a lot of local card shops, when occasionally some people playing a rogue deck might still be able to beat some of the best players at the shop. It's all a matter of like preparation and experience and just playing well. So to assume that casual players just suck is not fair to them. I don't think it's really fair to anybody. And really, you shouldn't be underestimating any opponent in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anyway. And the last myth I want to cover is the idea that casual players don't want to win. So I hear this from people from time to time, where people just kind of assume like casual players only play like completely for fun, and they just have no competitive spirit, and they just want to lose or whatever. They just want to play meme decks and they don't care, they're so bad. That's not true. Anybody wants to play at Yu-Gi-Oh! Or win. Anybody wants to win at Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a fundamental thing. Like in this game, you are still competing with your opponent. You want to win at the end of the day. You might want to win with your own deck, you might want to win with your own strategies. Maybe your deck's not as good as the other guy's deck. Maybe you're not as skilled as the person across the table from you. But that never really means that you just outright want to lose. What I will say is that a lot of casual players do want to experiment. Sometimes the goal is maybe more to have fun, or to just play with something different, or to pull off a specific combo. Maybe it's something kind of cheesy with Ojamas or whatever, but they still want to win. And I just don't think that it's fair to say that anybody like wants to lose, or just has no problem with losing. Some people take losing, better. In fact, if there's one compliment I can give to a lot of casual players, it's that many of them are, good at taking losses compared to a lot of competitive players who you see get really angry and disgruntled. We've seen like decks get thrown against walls and people get into fights and like all this stuff and lots of complaining. This isn't to say that casual players don't complain or don't get salty, but it's not that nobody wants to win. It's just maybe that they want to win in their own way, or, kind of by their own rules. So that said, it just doesn't make any sense to say that like casual players like don't want to win at Yu-Gi-Oh! Or aren't good at Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's the video. These are some of the things that I've noticed people like to say about casual players, oftentimes derogatory terms and stereotypes. And I just think that it's worth exploring these things because they just oftentimes are false and they can be disproven. So let me know down in the comments, what are some things that you've heard said about casual players that you just don't really feel is true, you don't really feel that it's accurate? This can apply to some people and not others, but I never really like the idea of putting everyone under like one umbrella. You just can't speak for the whole like group of people. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, subscribe, help me get to 100,000 subscribers. Also, I made a video, the same type of video like this, about competitive players, so I want you guys to also check that out. 5 myths about competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! That kind of need to be debunked as well. Alright, that's going to be it. I will see you guys in the next one.